basically give a half-hearted effort. I'm going to give all I have. Why? Because there are kings out there. I want to find them. Is there no king in thee? I recall one day, good night, it's been many, many years ago. I imagine it's been 27, 28 years ago. I was out visiting over, I think it was East Chicago. If it wasn't, it was North Hammond. Knocked on the door and a man came to the door. He's sitting here tonight, I feel sure. If he's not, he almost always is, always here just about. And he was sitting and knocked on the door. That man came to the door. And that man had some little children there. Well, I did not know it, that who was in there, but the wife of Ray Young was in there as a little girl that night. And one of our finest young laymen was in there. And Evangelist Keith Whitehouse, a little boy that night, was in there. When you go soul winning, look for the kings. Is there no king in that house? I'll keep on knocking till I find a king. Is there no king in this crowd? I'll keep on preaching till I find a king. Is there no king in my Sunday school class? I'll keep on teaching till I find a king. Is there no king in my congregation? I'll keep on preaching till I find a king. To a mother I say, is there no king in thee? You don't know what that little snotty-nosed boy is. There may be a king beating in that breast. Train him and teach him. Is there no king in thee, Susanna Wesley? Is there no king in thee? Those 22 children or so you've got, 20 children, 17th I think it was a young boy named John. And as she took him 1 hour every Thursday night and taught him the things of God for 1 hour every Thursday night, she did not know that she had the great John Wesley on her knee when she taught him. There was a king there. You don't know. You don't know. Teach your class as if there was a king in thee. Preach your sermon as if there were a king in thee. Go soul winning as if there were a king inside that house. Train your children as if they're a king sitting on your knee. But the main thing I'd like to emphasize tonight, and I mean this when I say that my message will not be lengthy tonight, the main thing I'd like to emphasize is this. Take the verse literally. Is there no king in thee? There is royalty in every person in this room tonight. But you don't realize it. I mean, there's king inside you. Christ in me, the hope of glory. There's a king in me. I say tonight, what happened to the king in you? What happened to the king in you? I ask that question to preachers. What happened to the king and preachers across America? It was Sam Jones, who many years ago was a circuit-riding preacher. Went to a workers' conference one day. He was just a common, simple preacher, pastored several churches. In the old days, they used to have a circuit of churches because one church couldn't pay you a salary. I'm thinking about getting another one this year, coming year myself. But those days, a fellow, in fact, when I used to pastor 2 churches years ago, I never told you about that, but for a while, I pastored 2 churches down in East Texas. I preached at one on Sunday morning and Sunday night, and one on Sunday afternoon. But Sam Jones went to a workers' conference. Just a common, average preacher. Riding on horseback when the conference ended, he said to his preacher friend, I learned something this morning. The friend said, what did you learn, Sam? Sam Jones said, the preacher said something this morning I'll never forget. He said, the pulpit's a throne, and I'm a king. The pulpit's a throne, and I'm a king. And he said, next Sunday morning, there'll be a king in my pulpit, and my pulpit will be a throne. And next Sunday, I'm ascending the royal stairway to royalty as I become not just a little preacher, but a king. And that one thing transformed the life of Sam Jones. Those early days when preachers first start out, there's king in them. A lot of wrong in them too. A lot of mistakes in them. But there's king in them. There's royalty in them. That's why God blesses them. I was talking the other day about some dumb things I did when I was a young preacher. I mean, like 62 and 61 and 60. But I don't know why God didn't strike me dead. Yes, I do know why God didn't strike me dead. Because God looked down and said, though that young man is a novice and he's green and he makes some mistakes, he's sincere, and there's some king in that young man, and I'm not going to stifle him. I'm going to bless him and help him. He's sincere. He's doing the best he can, and America needs nothing. America needs nothing tonight like she needs kings in the pulpit. I say to the preachers in America, is there no king in thee? I say to pastors tonight who spent 15 minutes getting somebody else's little outline from handfuls of purpose maybe, is there no king in thee? I say to preachers tonight, who anybody that comes in there to visit their service, a visiting preacher or missionary, they'll still say, come on up and preach for me. I say, is there no king in thee? I mean, the President of the United States, every time somebody comes by, doesn't say, come and address Congress for me. The Supreme Court Chief Justice, every time somebody comes in the courtroom, he knows, he doesn't say, come on up here and make this decision for me. I am saying America needs a generation of preachers who have king inside of them. Oh, young men start preaching and they have king inside of them. And yet what happens? Those early days, a bit reckless maybe, and a bit foolish maybe, but there was king inside the preacher. And I see them all over the country who've lost the king. There's no king in them anymore. There's no vision for the future. No courage to fight. No changing of convictions even. Stopping of the bus ministry. Quitting of the soul winning. No longer have a cause. I could stand here tonight and I could count by the dozens preachers where I used to preach in churches when I was younger. And these men, when they were my age, we grew up together. And these men had king in them. But they've gotten old, they've gotten tired. They're afraid to fight anymore. Get the king back inside of you. They don't have the soul-winning churches anymore. Get the king back inside of you. I say tonight to preachers of America, is there no king in thee? Dr. Elmer Towns made a statement several years ago that I didn't believe when I heard it. I believe it now, at least nearly. He said that he hardly knows a preacher in America whose church continued to grow after the preacher became 40 years of age. I was stunned when I heard that, and I said, Elmer, that couldn't be true. The longer I've observed, the more I realize it is true. A preacher, when he gets 40 years of age, he sometimes loses his royalty. The king leaves him. He wants to be secure. He wants to quit fighting. He's tired and he's weary. Oh, let me tell you something, young men of God, been called of God to proclaim the message of God. Don't ever lose the royalty on the inside of you. Is there no king in thee? I remember preaching with a king for years, Dr. John Rice. I saw him past 60 and 70 and 80, but brother, there was still royalty. His crown was solidly set upon his head all the way through his ministry. I remember that last sermon he preached in Wadsworth, Ohio, last one he preached with me in a Bible conference. He'd had a heart attack and a stroke, and he called me on the phone and said, Brother Hyles, let's try it again for old time's sake. Boy, was I ever glad to hear that. We went to Wadsworth, Ohio, and after couple of years, I guess, we had the first conference we'd had together for a couple of years. I stood over here on this side as Dr. Rice preached that night. He forgot his sermon. His mind wandered. He'd preach a while on one subject and preach on another subject. And I sat there and cried. All of us cried. The people that didn't know him, the young kids, laughed and made fun of him. But those of us who knew him and loved him realized we were hearing Dr. John Rice preach for the last time. But brother, I don't care if he forgot his sermon. There was a crown on his head and a scepter in his hand and a robe of royalty around his shoulders, and there was king there. Those who saw him when he preached his last sermon, it was to a ladies' meeting in Wadsworth, Ohio. One of the funniest things you ever heard of in your life. Dr. Rice was preaching that night to a bunch of ladies, or that day or night to a bunch of ladies, and he preached on one sermon, gave the invitation on the sermon. Then during the invitation, he forgot what he'd preached on. He thought he'd preached on something else. He preached on one sermon, but he thought he'd preached on John the Baptist and how Elizabeth prayed for a son, and God gave her a son. So he said, all you ladies, you want me to pray for you about the sermon he preached about? Stand up. They stood up. Then Dr. Rice's mind snapped, and he went back to the sermon on John the Baptist and thought he'd preached that. So he said, oh God, give all these ladies who are standing up babies. They said it looked like a machine gun had knocked them down, popped down all over the building. If you knew John Rice like I do, If you were 75 years old and he prayed you'd have a baby, you'd be afraid you might. But the old man never lost his zeal. He never lost his spunk. He never lost his fire. He never lost his compassion. He never lost his love. In God's name, don't lose your royalty. Is there no king in thee? I say not only to preachers, but I say it to fathers tonight. What's wrong with the American male? I'll tell you exactly what's wrong with the American male. There's no king in him anymore. There's no king in him. Is there no king in thee? Where are the fathers who say with Joshua, as for me and my house, we'll serve God, thank you. By the way, he didn't say, I'll check with my kids and see if they'll serve God. He said, we'll serve God. He didn't say, I'll check with my wife and see if she'll serve God. He said, I'll answer for my wife, she'll serve God. How do you know? I'll see to it she serves God. Well, how about your children? I'll take care of that too. As for me and my house, we'll serve God. You know what's wrong with America? We need some men and heads of houses who have some king on the inside of them. Our pulpits have little mealy-mouthed pussyfooters. Our homes have little mealy-mouthed pussyfooters. God give us some men who have king inside of them. God give us some men who can turn the TV to the off position. Some men who walk with God. Some men who provide for their own. Some men who pay their debts on time. We have a generation of playboys, golfers, bowlers, country clubbers, athletic clubbers, handballers, paddle ballers. I'm not against any of those things, but bless God, we need some men who are kings again. Is there no king in thee? Matthew 16:26 says, what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? What shall a man give in exchange for his soul? What God is saying is this. God is saying that little something on the inside of you, that spark and that zeal and that spunk and that courage and that enthusiasm and that royalty, let it reign on its throne. Is there no king in thee? Look at Elijah under the juniper tree. This is the same Elijah that prayed down fire from heaven. This is the same Elijah that had chopped the heads off 800 prophets of Baal. Boy, I wish I'd have seen that. I wish I'd lived in those days. I'd have got me a sword or an axe and beheaded a few people. But now I see Elijah under the juniper tree, discouraged, lost his king in him. Look at Peter fishing. Same fellow who said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. The same one that was chosen to lead the apostles. And in every list of the apostles, Peter's always mentioned first. He's out there fishing, naked, fishing. What's wrong with him? He lost his king inside of him. Look at Jonah under the gourd. Same fellow preached that great revival in a city of 600,000 people turned to God. Every one of them turned to God. Now Jonah's under the gourd, defeated, discouraged, said, let me die. What happened? He lost his royalty. Oh, I wish some of you men had become men again. I'm not talking about some of you little sissy britches fellows going home and saying to your wife, well, I'm going to be the boss from now on. She'll throw up on you. I'm not talking about talking like a king. I'm talking about becoming a man. Tell you how you can get some authority. Pay your debts. Be honest. I'll tell you, get some authority. Be a man. I don't mean assert yourself as a man. I mean be a man. She'll find it out. Pay your debts. Work. Bear the load. Samson grinding at the mill. What's wrong with Samson? Tell you what's wrong with him. He lost the king in him. But I want to tell you something. Elijah came back and got his king back in him. And he was taken up into heaven in a whirlwind with horses and chariots. Samson came back and got his king back in him when he had that one great closing victory before he died.